Tori, thank you so much for joining me today on the Surf Nation Football Focus chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
We've got a few things to cover. We're going to start with the experience and obviously the success of the Surf Select team that you took over to Northern Ireland. Let's review that and get your reflections on then overall when you went back, or even maybe you were on the plane on the way back. Like, what were the big takeaways from you? What did you enjoy the most?
Yeah, I mean, some of the huge ones, obviously, just, thinking about the staff that we were in contact with. We had some assistant coaches that were local to the area, Alan and Mel, and they were just incredible. They would just go above and beyond whatever we needed. They were right on top of it. Same thing goes with our liaison, Don. He was just incredible, making sure the girls were taken care of. The tournament directors and staff, everyone was just top notch. So it was a really great event to be a part of, with just brilliant people around us. Obviously the parade was amazing as well. Just seeing all the teams, all the clubs coming together and just fill an entire stadium. It was really cool to see just how big that tournament was. And then lastly, of course, just winning the cup, receiving the most sporting girls team was obviously for me my proudest achievement of the tournament. And then one of our players receiving the golden boot as well was super special. So yeah, I mean, those were some of the huge experiences so far. So it was just really cool on the plane. I was like, did that just happen? But yeah, it was really awesome. It was a complete whirlwind, but it was really great.
I'm glad you mentioned there about the kind of prestige that tournament is held in. And obviously I grew up in the area, so yeah. I'm well aware, there's history around. Yeah. You wouldn't think there's history around a youth tournament, but you can feel that, can't you, in the community?
Yeah, you absolutely feel it. And, I caught myself definitely watching some of the academies, just being like, okay, who's going to be the next star coming through? Because, I mean, you received just the tournament directory, and you see some already big names like Kwanzaa from Liverpool. They're, the players are just on the front cover, having just played there a couple years ago. So, I mean, you definitely feel that. And the local people around are super proud of that. And, I had some guys just come up to me and say, I saw Beckham play here. I'm like, that's incredible. So there's definitely a massive history tied to the tournament, and it's a huge one for sure in Europe.
Okay. Keys to success. Talk about, because obviously as I get more familiar with this landscape, I start putting myself into the coach's place. Okay, well, what are the challenges here? And to me, bringing a group of surf players across the country, which obviously sounds great, you're getting the pick of the talent and all that there, but then bringing them together in a very, very limited time space. How did you go about, I suppose, two elements, tactically and then from a team spirit and a chemistry viewpoint? How did you bring them together?
Yeah. So tactically that, we had 2 Zoom meetings before even meeting. So that was kind of helpful just to see each other's faces again, just to get on a call and just talk through a few things. And then just once we touched base, we had a meeting just about team expectations. Obviously coming into it, we wanted to treat it as a business trip. We wanted to take it serious, get the job done, but obviously having fun aside from that as well. But how do we have fun? Well, we work hard and we compete for every game. And so that's the kind of fun that we wanted to have. As a team spirit, from a team spirit point of view, we definitely, played a lot of games. So little tag games, things like that before the sessions, just to kind of warm them up. I thought that was huge. Anytime we had some downtime, we would go on a team walk to the market. I would pair them up based on positions. So I thought that was really helpful. Or, I'd just be like, hey, I've seen you with her too many times. Go find someone new. And they would just eventually start laughing about it. Oh, okay, I'm going to go find a new friend. Or sitting with different people on the bus, I definitely made that a challenge. Hey, go talk to someone new, go make new friends. Don't just be in your comfort zone, because if we're expecting to do well on the field, we have to be able to talk to each other off the field. So I thought that was definitely huge. Something that they, took on themselves in the second the third and then the final game, they were playing music before the game, which was like incredible. They're singing on the bus. They're getting all hyped up. It was great. They started singing Party in the USA on the way into our changing rooms. And so we had a lot of eyes on us, which was great. But coming onto the field, they walk the walk. So I'm like, hey, do whatever you need to do as long as you're able to play and perform. But it was really great to just see them really take a hold of that and get really pumped up.
Andy Prosser's going to love that. The line about the business trip. That's
cool. It was hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's stay on that there. This aspect of, okay, it is a trip, and sometimes, the gray area between results and development and fun and excellence is always somewhat, they overlap in some elements, but that's really interesting how initially straight off the bat you were pretty clear on, we're going here, but we're going here for a reason. Talk about that.
Yeah. Coming in, like, you don't want to put too much pressure on them. Obviously everyone knows you need to win, especially in there. Like, we needed to win. Our goal was to win the first 3 group games, because you never know what can happen. So there is that pressure. So it's like, you kind of have to talk about it, but in a way that doesn't make them, completely freak out and put too much pressure on themselves, because then it's like they're not going to be able to perform and play. And again, it's a team that's never played together before. So it's a pretty delicate thing, especially in the first game you play together. They're feeling things out. And so if you don't get that result, then it drives that pressure a bit more. And, but yeah, it's.
In the training sessions then, up to, you mentioned there about the games, and you have, how confident were you with identifying what you had as a team, or did you go into the games thinking one or two might surprise me in certain areas?
I didn't have many expectations for the players. I just said what I wanted from the team, and then it was on them to step into those roles. So I was very clear right off the bat at how we wanted to attack. And I think that coming into this tournament, I wanted to be very clear with them on how we were going to score goals. So like, when I asked them, how are we going to score in this game? I wanted them to have an answer, and to feel confident that they could achieve that. Not to limit them on scoring in different ways or on corners or things like that. But I think that's what really separated this tournament for me, is that as a coach, I wanted them to have that answer. And so I think that, like, again, it's not expectations on individual players. It's more, this is what we need from the team. And then it's on the individuals to step into those roles. Because everyone got an opportunity to start and to play majority of the game. So it was just based on those first 2 games where I played everyone and everyone had a start, just to see what my best starting 11 was going into the final 2 games.
How did you pick your captain?
It was pretty tough. Like, there was a lot of thought involved. At first it was easy to pick the goalies, just because, they were really solid at the back and leading the back. So it was a pretty easy choice for me there, because they were doing exactly what they needed to, leading by example, going to sleep early, having just the small things like eating a healthy meal at dinner, things like that you can see. And then, being first on the bus, stuff like that. And then obviously on the field, doing what they needed to do, leading in there as well. In the third game, it was more about, we needed someone who was a little bit more involved in the games, not saying the goalies weren't as much, but we needed someone who was a part of, at least the back line, just to kind of a little bit closer to the rest of the team. Which is, I felt, our center back. She was great. I think she wasn't as vocal, but she definitely led by example. She hardly ever gave the ball away. And I think that that's something we sort of needed, just to have that simple game in that picking her. And then in our final game, it was an easy choice. There was a girl, Layla, she scored like 5 goals in one game, and like, she was just incredible. And she definitely peaked. And so it was the only decision for me coming into the cup final to pick her. And she really just led us. And again, she led by example, by doing the work off the ball, keeping the ball, keeping the game simple, but then off the field as well. at halftime, she had a lot to say to the team, and she did a really great job in leading us in that final.
You hear a lot about what we're not producing in the development in the US and what needs to improve, and we don't really talk about what we are producing and where we're having success. And when you go to tournaments, I love hearing about, okay, well, they went there and they won the tournament. All right, then what did you feel that, when you're on that sideline and you're, kind of confident in your team winning the tournament, what did you feel that the US based players at Surf, where they had an advantage over perhaps European players at that stage of development?
I mean, yeah. I mean, my girls, like, aside from just being better athletes, like being able to stand the week-long competition and come into the final game looking fresh, being able to last 60 plus minutes, just being top athletes, even competing against girls who are a year older. Aside from that, like they had the game awareness, the soccer IQ to be able to execute game plans as well. Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was a really easy job because I would say one thing one time and they would just have it done. So just that coachability and again, that game knowledge really came into play. Obviously the individual technical skill was huge. They were able to beat players 1v1, and defensively, again, just they're just better in the duels and in 1v1. So, I mean, across the field, they were solid. Like it was great to see. And obviously, like, the games weren't, they weren't handed to us. We really had to work for them. But I definitely would say that just the level of athletes that we're working with and intelligent soccer players we have here were really key in this tournament too.
Where were the challenges? Where did you find on the sideline that you were thinking, okay, well, this is a little bit different in terms of the game style or in terms of maybe the tactical element? Where did you find that?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely played against some very direct opposition that were, again, they were decent athletes as well. They were giving us a run for sure. And so for our girls, it was really about competing in the air and winning, the aerial duels as well, like heading the ball. And I think that's something that maybe our girls were a little bit caught off guard with. They weren't necessarily used to playing a very direct physical opposition. And so at first they were like a little bit caught off guard, but after kind of going through heading the ball and attacking the ball out of the air and how you position yourself, they definitely felt more comfortable. And again, credit to them. Like as soon as, I said one thing one time, they were able to just apply it. Again, it was something they needed to get a little bit more comfortable with and more experience with. But I think that's definitely was one of the challenges, is how we compete for the ball in the air, how we do it with bravery and belief that you're going to win it. And then again, winning that second ball, keeping possession, keeping the ball moving quickly from there. In our first game against Larne, they were very physical, very direct. And again, anytime one of our players took more than 2-3 touches, like they were getting tackled, they were losing the ball, and then we were having to run right back down to our goal again. So it was how we move the ball quickly and move off the ball even faster.
It's interesting. Like it's interesting that, like, I love that point about the second balls, because sometimes high pressing teams, which a lot of people want to be today, kind of overlook that element that you're going to create with a high pressing team. You're going to create a type of game that is going to be more second balls because the opposition are going along. So you can't really a lot of teams complain that they're direct, but what you're saying there is that you gave yourself another challenge, and then the players had to then step up to that. That's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, winning the first ball is important, but it's all in the second ball. That's the one that's coming down. That's where that next pass is coming from. So I didn't tell them that, we needed to win both, but for me, the second ball is really where you're going to be able to get the ball down and keep it.
What about the post-game process? How did you manage? Was it more informal, sit and talk after the game? Did you go with a formal approach at night where it was meetings and sitting down, or how did you navigate around that?
Yeah, I would say after games, it was pretty informal. That game was done, it was a basic reflection, little review stuff we needed to kind of prepare for the next game. But again, it was about kind of that game's done, it's over with. We have to change our mentality and focus on the next one. Because again, in those first 3 games, like if if you're not coming out with a result, you might not be making it into the cup, and that's ultimately where we wanted to be for the cup in the cup final. So yeah, I mean, after games, it was a pretty brief, reflection and review, and then getting back on the bus, going to have dinner, and just kind of relaxing after that and recovering. And then on game day, we would have meetings just about an hour before we left, just to kind of go over the things that we wanted to talk about. My assistant coach, Mel, she had some insight on the teams we were playing with. She was pretty familiar with some of the players. So she was kind of able to kind of help us with how we wanted to attack the team and how we wanted to set up against them. So we would go over little things like that about what we wanted to, how we wanted to press team, how we wanted to set up pre-game. And then, I mean, just any topics from the previous game that might follow us into the next one, we'd mention that as well.
Another reflection question: were there any specific areas that you felt as a coach that week kind of led you to tap into to improve a little bit more?
Yeah, I definitely think that it's about, because it is a new team. So for me, it's about trying to hit every important element. So like last year, I went through Surf Select. I went to Minnesota for the Target USA Cup, and something that I remember from that is, sometimes players, even though they're brought in with their club teams, they don't always apply what they know from their teams into the Surf Select environment. So like, as an example, like our first kickoff in our first game, it was like pass back, pass back, pass back, and now the goalie's on the ball with the forward who's like sprinting full speed at her, and she's like, what happened here? So just things like that, like even just going over it, like, hey, on kickoff we want to go forward. So like, it's just saying that alone, just a reminder. And again, you don't know if it'll apply to this group, but it's important to be prepared. So trying to hit all of your bases. So like, we know what we want to do attack. We know what we want to do in transition and in defense, but it's all the little things that you might not think about, like including throw-ins and set pieces, how you want to, attack those as well. That was something that as a coach, I wanted to make sure I hit all my bases in this tournament, and just to make sure that they were as prepared as possible with limited time to prepare as well.
For a coach that's thinking about getting involved in the select program, what advice would you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing is this should be a fun experience for the girls. They're coming together from different parts of the country, and I think that as a coach, we can make sure it's, again, it's still a business trip, but having fun and finding the fun in that as much as possible. So getting them smiling, laughing, being silly, I think that really opens them up, and they're only gonna, they're still gonna come into games and compete. But I think that's definitely important, is just getting their personalities coming out in maybe more uncomfortable environments that they're not necessarily used to. And then again, as a coach, like, make sure we're representing Surf Nation well, but also coming in as prepared as possible. So for me, that was really making sure that I hit all my bases this year, talking about kickoff, talking whatever else it was. So just maybe sit down, really think about what it is you're coming into. It's an entirely new team. So making sure you're as prepared as possible and you have your sessions planned out, but also leaving time for, again, just the team building activities and things like that, because that's just as important.
All right, let's move on to your journey in the beach soccer element of it. And this is so interesting. It's a game that it's in its infancy. You might correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in its infancy in the US, probably within 10 years. Yeah. I mean, how did you get into it?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a friend, she actually used to coach me, but she's my friend now. She's been involved with the beach soccer, with the U.S. beach soccer national team since its start with the women. So she got me into it. It was actually before COVID. She would text me. She's like, "Come on, let's go train. Let's go train." And at first I was like, "Yeah, I don't know about that. That sounds like maybe not for me." But then, eventually she convinced me, and so I came out, and she just introduced me to an entirely different side of the game. It was really great. So yeah, just this last year, I was able to play in my first tournament in January in Florida. From there, I was recruited by the U.S. beach national team coaches, invited to a camp the following month. And then in there, I made the roster, which in March we competed in El Salvador and in like a 3-team round robin, and we came out with the trophy. So that was great experience for sure. But yeah.
Physically, it looks off the charts difficult physically.
Yeah, it's definitely demanding. Like how we do our rotations, it's free subbing. So basically the expectation is you're on for no more than 4 minutes. You work as hard as you can, and then you get off the field and it's someone else's shift. Sometimes you can go a little bit longer, but the idea of the game is you're not trying to hold yourself back. You're really just trying to work as hard as you can. Obviously with the sand too, it's another element of running in the soft sand. But we want to play a high tempo, high paced game. And yeah, we have the depth to do it. So
is it more on the tactical side, is it more like futsal with the overload, or are you actually, because I've watched a bit of it, or is it actually a real risk to play any type of possession close to your own goal? Is it better to play that higher up?
I mean, it depends on the team, depends on I guess what your philosophy is, your methodology is. I would say for us, like we're looking to try and build out the back as much as you can. You can do that with 2, checking in with the goalie. The goalies in this game are actually very involved. They're almost like a quarterback. So your goalie really determines how you're able to do that. And you can also come in with 3. So it's like you're playing like a 3-1, or you can play a 2-2 or a 2-2 that's stacked. So yeah, I mean, it's really like the goalie, if they're comfortable with their feet, you're really able to play out the back. Something that's a bit newer is that players are playing in a little bit closer. So they're like coming into a 5x5x5 triangle and just keeping the ball in there, and then they're playing over the top. So it's it really depends on like what the game plan is. But I would say, yeah, most teams do try and build out the back to a certain extent.
It's so interesting because how many times I've heard growing up, your youth coach or whatever would go out and look at the field when everyone got there, and then would announce to everyone that, hey, we're not building out today. You can't play on that pitch. It's got to go long. There's no more uneven surface than a beach, and still teams are still playing out of it.
Yeah, seriously. There's definitely high risk, but hopefully high reward. Getting, there are definite positives in playing out the back, getting teams ball watching, drawing more players, things like that, trying to play in behind. But yeah, definitely with the sand, you have to play more in the air. That's the whole idea behind beach as much as possible, because it is more of a reliable flight of the ball. There's not as much bouncing. You never know where the sand's going to take the ball. So it's important to kind of have that understanding as well.
This is a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you need to change or tweak any agility, physicality elements with the technique because of the fact that the ball's on the ground? Not to say you need to practice bicycle kicks, but volleys, side volleys, do they become more of a necessity, or is that still more, it depends the player you are?
No, I think it definitely, it's something you need to really work on. You need to be able to keep the ball in the air. So being able just to juggle in the sand on the uneven surface is different. Like sometimes your feet get dug in a little bit as well. So you're having to kind of get used to that sort of delay where the sand is kind of holding your feet a bit more. So there's like a different timing of it. And then, definitely the volleys and being able to control the ball out of the air. Because again, you do want to try and play with the ball in the air as much as possible. So if you're able to receive it with a nice touch to yourself where it invites you to play it back in, or a lot of players too, they're expected to juggle with the ball on their thigh and move up the field as well. You see that a lot with the goalies. They bring the ball up on their thigh. So again, it's running in the soft sand while you're juggling with the ball on your thigh, and then you're trying to look around at the same time where who's open and what spaces you can find as well. So yeah, definitely having to work on the volleys and the juggling in the sand and being somewhat competent with that. But
yeah, the more I learn about it, the more difficult it sounds. Well, what type of training are you doing on a weekly basis? Are you doing individual work? Are you doing stuff with the team? Is it a little bit of both? Or talk us through that.
Yeah, so we have bi-weekly Zoom meetings with the team. Currently, we're doing more like tactical review, so it's more about like the movement, and we're watching teams and how they set up and how we defend against it, or how we have defended against in the past. Maybe what we want to tweak next time we play them. But when we are training, we'll hop onto Zoom meetings, so it's people from across the country in the player pool getting on together to train together with the coach leading the session. And then for me individually, it's really about I am lucky. I have a community of beach soccer players with me. So there's actually a men's team I'm able to train with in Oceanside, which is not too far from me. There's SoCal Beach Soccer Club. So I hop in with them and they have some nice trainings and we get a game in as well at the end. Aside from that, I would say that playing grass soccer is still really relevant, although it is, different and you need to incorporate sand training as well. I still do play grass soccer and I play indoor and, I just play different places. But yeah, I'm still trying to tweak about how I can best prepare myself. But that's kind of the balance I've found so far. So it's about 2 days a week or so in the sand, 2 or 3, and then again, like 2 or 3 playing grass.
Oh, it's fascinating. Mm-hmm. Where do you see the game growing? What barrier is obviously it's the mass participation aspect of it. Is that a challenge with the beach? Have we started doing camps? I mean, basically, I told you before we start recording, I have an 8-year-old who would love the sport.
Yeah.
Where does the next generation kind of get introduced, or where do you see the opportunities with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definite opportunities coming up. I think that what we have is, again, there's smaller tournaments. Like there's one in Oceanside. I believe there's some on the East Coast in Florida and in Virginia Beach as well. As long as we're providing the opportunity to play and join, I think that players will be interested, parents will be interested. It's a great game to play. In terms of barriers, I think, again, it's just providing the opportunities to play. We have the beaches, we don't have the fields. So, if you put a goal on the beach, like people are going to use it and then they're going to get more interested in the sport. So as an example, in Santa Monica, they have goals in the sand. So they have goals on the beach. People can just, come down to the beach and shoot, or, even get a pickup game going. So as long as there's opportunities to play, I think that the players will come. We're just kind of limited in what we have in the US for fields. So like one thing we're trying to do in Oceanside is getting permanent goals in the sand. And I can speak just from personal experience. I was playing in Portugal in June. Anytime like in our tournament, we weren't using the goals, there would be kids just like practicing their bicycle kicks, practicing volleys. And so like, if you're growing up in an environment where you have goals in the sand, you're going to use them. And so that's really where we get the interest from, because I know a lot of people who don't even know that beach soccer is a thing. Like I get questions all the time, like, oh, wow, like that's amazing. I've never heard about it. And so then they're interested. But yeah, not a lot of people do know that it is a thing and that it's another opportunity to play.
Fascinating. Who's the best in the world? Where is the US in context of top 5 in the world?
So currently, I think as of a few months ago, we were ranked top 5.
Brilliant.
Recently, we've been dropped down a little bit. I do have to say, though, we don't get as many opportunities to play. So like basically the rankings work on points that you earn from competing. So if you're not competing, you're not earning points. Arguably one of the best teams in the world with the best players is Brazil. I'm not sure where they're ranked. I know it's not close to top 5 just because they don't have opportunities to play as a national team. Spain, they're very good, but they're like way beyond anyone, completely out of reach just because of the amount of opportunities they have to play. So if we're able to kind of, again, get more tournaments, maybe closer to the US in the Americas, or even just here, we host our own, that will only boost our player pool for one, because people are able to come see the games or get more involved. And then obviously boost our team as well, because we are competing and we are getting, challenged as well.
I could see that if it was kind of organized to a stage that you could get that a tenth of the participation of youth soccer, would be unbelievable, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know. Like, so any kids that I've had that have played in a beach soccer tournament, like they just come back and they're like, that's amazing. I mean, there's like, you're on a beach, you're playing with your friends, you're listening to music, you know, it doesn't get any better than that. So, you know, it's definitely a popular sport, but just not many people know about it.
Well, we need to get Andy Prosser and Brian Engie to set up the Surf Beach
Yeah, come on now, let's do it.
development.
There we
Yeah,
go.
fantastic. Brilliant. Tori, we need to follow up on this. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for jumping on, and thanks for all your hard work with the surf teams, and congrats on all the success. And hey, keep it going. It's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really great being on. But yeah, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you guys again.